Believe me, nothing a South Carolina fan says to me bothers me. You're talking about a group of people who think mayonnaise is a meal, okay? Hey, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, live for you on LouTube today, and thanks for watching, I really appreciate it also. And back today with another 2018 college football team preview, and this one is a popular request. I've probably got this team requested every single day, multiple times since I started doing these team previews 2 or 3 weeks ago. I'm doing it today because it was requested by Patreon member Dustin S. So Dustin, shout out to you, sir. Thank you for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. If you guys are interested in joining up on the Patreon page, click the first link in the description of this video or any video that I've uploaded over the past month or so. That'll take you to the Patreon page and you can join up over there. I'm previewing any 2 teams for every single Patreon member. So they're all sending me 2 teams and I'm making sure I preview those 2 teams before I go on to any other previews that I want to do or comments from you guys here or on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. But we still got, over 3 weeks to go before the start of college football season, so that's plenty of time for me to get in a ton of previews between now and then, so don't worry if there's one you want to see me do. I'm sure I will get around to it before the start of the season. I'm going to do 2 previews for you guys today, so this is going to be the first one. I'll post a second preview video sometime later, late this afternoon or early evening. We also have the live show tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. We do that every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 p.m. It's a call-in show, so you can call in, tell me why I'm wrong about this prediction or any of the other predictions I've done. Discuss college football, argue, yell at me, whatever it is you want to talk about, you can call in and do that. That's tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. If you haven't seen the live shows, you really should check them out. They're a lot of fun. The comment section is like the Wild Wild West, and we get a lot of good phone calls from all around the country, so make sure you check that out. Subscribe to the Uncle Lou channel if you're not already. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year. Give this video a thumbs up if you're excited about the start of college football season or if you're a South Carolina fan. And share this video with your friends if you're a South Carolina fan. And let me know in the comment section down below after you watch the video how you think I did. What games am I right or wrong on? How about the overall record? How did I do? Anyway, I've wasted enough time. Let's get on with it. Today's preview, the 2018 South Carolina Gamecocks. All right, here we go. It's time for my official South Carolina preview and prediction for the 2018 season. Now, South Carolina is a team that I've spent a lot of time talking about this offseason, and a lot of it has been positive, or what I thought was positive. But I have heard from a lot of South Carolina fans mad at me. I remember a video I did back in, I think, February, where I said I think Carolina has the potential to maybe win 10 games this year. Carolina fans got mad as hell. I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. They're going 12-0. They're winning the SEC. They're making the playoff, all this kind of stuff. Listen, anytime somebody tells a South Carolina fan they might win 10 games, South Carolina fans should get on their knees and thank them. That that's a historical season for South Carolina. I mean, last year, what were you last year? 9-4. A good year. You finished second in the East. Ties for your second best season ever, right? I mean, one year you won the East. So anytime you finish second in the East, that's the second best year you've ever had. At least in the SEC. Of course, you do have an ACC title from back in 1969. Congratulations. Of course, in 1969, Georgia beat the absolute hell out of you. So even your best year ever, 1969 ACC champs, you still lost to Georgia. Anyway, this is not a trash talk video, though. Let's get on with the Gamecock roaches here. Will Muschamp comes back 3rd year in Columbia. All right, he inherits a 3-win team. Spurrier quit in the middle of the season. They go 3-9, losing to the Citadel and everyone else they played with a pulse. He comes in year 1 a couple of years ago, doubles the win total, goes 6-7 for the year, right? So pretty good year, doubled the wins. Come back last year for his 2nd year in Columbia, win 9 games, like I mentioned, 9-4, second in the East, big bowl win over a Michigan team with absolutely no offense. and finish the season on a high note. So reason to be excited heading into this year. A lot of parts and pieces coming back. Jake Bentley back as your starter at quarterback. Deebo Samuel returns from a nasty leg injury against, was it Kentucky last year? You got some returning running backs. Rico Dowdle should be at or near 1,000 yards this year, I would think. Offensive line, probably some question marks there, I would think, heading into this year. I wouldn't consider South Carolina's offensive line to be elite by any stretch of the imagination. Are they terrible? No, but definitely not a strength. Brian Edwards, the other wide receiver on the outside. So South Carolina's got some skilled players at the skill position on offense. We'll see how the offensive line can hold up. And the running backs, although they're good, I wouldn't consider any of them to be great. But the offense should be improved, I would think, and it needs to be. Will Muschamp, of course, has a history of having bad to terrible offenses, going back to his time at Florida, right? His first 2 years at South Carolina, he finished 14th and 12th in offense in the SEC. So has he learned his lessons from Florida moving into South Carolina? Not really. It doesn't look like it. Another issue, offensive coordinators. He can't find one that he likes or is any good or that he's willing to keep. They're on another offensive coordinator this year. They fire Roper after last year. He was coordinator first 2 years with Muschamp in Columbia. Like I mentioned, 14th and 12th in offense in the SEC. They fire him. Promote Brian McClendon, ex-Georgia wide receiver, an assistant at UGA for a while, wide receivers coach at South Carolina for the last couple of years. They move him to offensive coordinator. This is going to make Will Muschamp's fourth different offensive coordinator in the 7 years that he's been a head coach. So no consistency there. Now, you've got an experienced quarterback with some experienced wide receivers. So the problems that you normally see when you change OC like that, maybe some of that will be limited due to the experience of the players you have. Brian McClendon's looking to up the tempo on offense. He wants to run more of a fast-paced, hurry-up type of deal. I don't think we're going to see anything like a Chip Kelly type of offense, but he does want to run some more up-tempo things. Basically, he gave a quote saying, well, if we're 12th or 14th in the SEC running 80 plays a game, how will we do if we run 100 plays a game? So sounds to me like Brian McClendon doesn't really want to make South Carolina's offense any better, just wants to make them run more plays, more opportunities, equal more points. That's his thinking. We'll see how that works out. For him. You scored 24 points a game last year. You got Bentley and Deebo back. Deebo's an elite wide receiver. I mean, I don't care what anybody wants to say. Deebo is an elite wide receiver. Now, I do want to see him play week one. You know, he had the leg injury. Now, broken legs are usually easier to come back from than like blown out knees or whatever, but still, it's a significant injury. Everything I'm hearing from South Carolina fans and in the news and on the internet is that everything's good to go with Deebo. But mentally, you always want to see the guy get out there and do it at least one time, right, before you're ready to completely buy back in and say, okay, the old Deebo is back. Another thing to look for with Deebo Samuel, he was an elite kick returner for South Carolina. He single-handedly won some games for them during his time at South Carolina with his kick returning ability. Is South Carolina going to take that risk and put him on on kick return? Again, kick returns are one of the most dangerous plays in college football. This isn't a secret. They're all the time looking for ways to make kickoffs and punts safer, less contact, all these kinds of things to try to protect these players because it's just a dangerous play. You've got a lot of players with a full head of steam colliding. A lot of injuries happen on kicks. Is South Carolina going to roll the dice and put Deebo Samuel back as a kick returner this year? I have no idea. We'll see. If I'm South Carolina, I'm not doing it. Deebo is such an elite wide receiver. I'm not risking it. A guy that was hurt after 3 games last year, missed the rest of the season. I'm not risking that this year. I'm putting Deebo Samuel at wide receiver and leaving him there and finding somebody else to return kicks. We'll see what South Carolina and Muschamp decide to do. What about the defensive side of the ball? Obviously, that's Muschamp's strong suit. Talent-wise, South Carolina is not at or near the top of the SEC in terms of overall talent when you look at teams like Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, probably even Florida. All teams with more talent overall than South Carolina. But Will Muschamp does have an elite defensive mind, and he's going to have that defense ready to play week in and week out. I don't think anybody would question Muschamp's ability to coach and run a defense, regardless of what you think about him as a head coach. Now, they lose a lot in the middle of that defense, a lot of production from last year, a lot of tackles and sacks from the middle of that defense last year. We'll see how well South Carolina is able to backfill that. Muschamp has recruited at an okay level, but again, he's not going to have the depth there that you'll see at some of the higher-ranked teams, same ones, Georgia, Alabama, and Auburn come to mind. There's some talent there at the starting positions, but the rotation and the depth up the middle is going to be an issue for South Carolina this year. UNCLELOU and Brunson. UNCLELOU is a defensive tackle. Brunson's a linebacker. Probably your two best players on defense, in my opinion. Both have potential to be all SEC players and potentially future NFL players. But like I mentioned, with the depth and the rotation, you don't have much behind them. Now, that could be an issue, obviously, if one of those two guys were to get injured. And also defensive, coaches like to rotate defensive linemen in and out to keep them fresh for the fourth quarter. South Carolina is a team that when they rotate a second-string defensive line in, you do see a drop-off in terms of talent and production. So something to keep an eye on there. Cornerbacks, your two corners. You got two seniors at corner, but what have they really done? That's probably a weakness on this South Carolina defense is going to be the secondary. You've also got some issues at safety. You bring in a transfer from Rice. What is that? And you got a freshman. So you're probably, either way, you're probably going to have a first-year player starting at safety there. Your two cornerbacks are best known for being coached by Snoop Dogg when they played youth football. Outside of that, no one's considering those two guys to be elite. Now, Jamias Williams, of course, a Georgia kid. A lot of Georgia fans wanted him to enroll at UGA. He's a little undersized for what Kirby Smart's looking to do with his defense. I'm not making excuses about not getting him or whatever. Obviously, Georgia wanted him. But he's a little undersized for what Kirby wanted to do. Probably a better fit at South Carolina. He'll probably get a lot of playing time this year. My guess would be he'll either be the other safety or maybe like a nickelback type of thing for Jamias Williams. He could be one to look at, too, if they decide not to use Deebo Samuel in the return game. Jamias Williams, of course, an elite returner in high school and a really great athlete. So that would be, I think, somebody to look for at the returner position if you didn't want to take the chance and put Deebo out there, right? So expectations are high in Columbia, without doubt. You were 9-4 last year, second in the East, big win over Michigan, favorable schedule, at least within the SEC, I guess. Your toughest SEC game, probably Georgia. You get them at home. We're going to go through the schedule. We'll just put the schedule up now and go through it. Enough beating around the bush here. All right, so here's the schedule for South Carolina. I'm looking at the wrong page now. About to read it off the Florida schedule. It wouldn't do you no good, would it? All right, here's the schedule. Here it is. All right, you start off with 3 home games in a row. Week 1, Coastal Carolina. Huge in-state rivalry game. Oh, no, wait a minute. I'm thinking of your last game of the year, which we'll get to that in a minute. Coastal Carolina, Week 1 at home. You'll win this game. Great year for South Carolina to have one of these type of games Week 1 because you have a new offensive coordinator. And it's not like he's completely changing up what you're doing offensively, but you are moving to the more up-tempo pace like we mentioned earlier. So good to have this game Week 1, sort of a real scrimmage game Week 1 against an inferior team that South Carolina should have no trouble with. This will give the coaches an opportunity to see how the players are doing in this new offense, maybe try a couple of different players at a couple of different positions, especially in the defensive secondary, which I think is going to be a weakness for South Carolina this year. Try to get things figured out heading into Week 2, but you guys get an easy win here Week 1 without question, so you're 1-0. Now, Week 2, home against Georgia. I've already done my Georgia preview. If you guys have seen it, you know which way I go on this game. Obviously, I'm a Georgia fan. You can watch every preview video I've done. I try to do these straight down the middle. I did the Georgia preview. I did not have Georgia going 12-0. A lot of people do. I didn't. Okay, so you can accuse me of whatever you want. I do make a lot of trash talking videos, but these previews, I try to do these previews straight edged and as right down the middle as I can. You're losing this game to Georgia. Georgia's just way too talented and way too deep at every position, really, for you to beat them this year. Muschamp needs a couple of more recruiting classes. He needs more depth. He needs more talent on the defensive side of the ball. I like what he's doing over there, but all around, you just don't stack up talent-wise to the University of Georgia. The last 2 years, we've beat South Carolina by, 14 points both years. It wouldn't surprise me to see this game go in a similar way. South Carolina's going to be excited. It's going to be a home game, first conference game of the year. This is a 3:30 game. I'm glad it's 3:30 instead of at night. Be a 3:30 game. Not going to surprise me one bit if South Carolina comes out and jumps out to a lead in this game. That won't surprise me at all. It wouldn't even surprise me, honestly, to see South Carolina winning this game at halftime. I trust Kirby Smart way more than I trust Will Muschamp, which is something I'll talk about in a few minutes, especially when it comes to in-game adjustments, halftime adjustments, things like that. If you look last year, there was a handful of games, 2 or 3, that Georgia struggled at in the first half, defensively especially. Then you look at what happened in the second half, and it was a complete turnaround. Oklahoma, South Carolina, you guys scored a couple on us in the first half. We shut you down in the second half. Missouri scored 3 or 4 on us in the first half. We shut them down in the second half. I can see something similar to that happening this year. I don't think this will be a blowout or anything, not a 40-10 type game or anything like that. I can see this game being close through 3 quarters. I think Georgia, especially the depth that Georgia has. This is an early game in September. It's going to be 90 degrees. I think the fact that Georgia's going to be able to rotate players in and out of this game without having much of a drop-off in talent, as opposed to South Carolina, whose first string is pretty good, or really pretty good on defense, but the second string not where it needs to be. I think that will show in the second half of this game, particularly the fourth quarter, and I think Georgia pulls away late, winning somewhere in the 10 to 17 point range. In week 2, you're sitting at 1-1. Week 3, you get Marshall at home, win. Again, a team from a conference that's got no business competing with an SEC team. Don't be demoralized by your loss to Georgia. There's going to be a lot of teams that lose to Georgia this year. Don't let that loss to Georgia cost you a game to Marshall that you got no business winning. I don't see that happening. Talent gap too big here. You get them in Columbia, you'll win this game. You're sitting at 2-1, heading into your first road game, back-to-back road games here. Against Vandy and Kentucky. We'll start with Vandy. On the road at Vandy, no such thing as a home field advantage at Vanderbilt. There's just not. There's high school stadiums in Georgia that pack more people in than Vandy does. Vandy taking a step back this year. I've done a preview on them too. Going to be a long, rough year for Vanderbilt, I think. South Carolina wins this game fairly easily. Just not a whole lot of point talking much more about this. I will say this, though. When you talk to Vanderbilt fans, this is one of the games they think they can steal this year. Vanderbilt fans are trying to find a way to get to 6 wins this year so they can make a bowl game. This is one of the games they have circled as a game. They know they're underdogs in this game, but this is a game that the fans anyway, feel like maybe they can steal this one. Maybe they have a chance here. Don't let that happen. That would be an embarrassing loss for you. I got you at a win. You're sitting at 3-1 heading into week 5 at Kentucky. Toss-up. I don't want to hear it either. You guys have lost to Kentucky for how many years in a row? 4. That's hard to do. Kentucky, one of the most consistent teams in the SEC for the last 50 years. Consistently, not any good. Every once in a while they have an 8 or 9 win season. Absolutely no excuse for any team losing to Kentucky 4 times in a row. That's embarrassing and sad. You have to play them on the road. They have an elite running back in Benny Snell. They've got some quarterback issues. If they can get those issues worked out by the time this game comes around, this is going to be a close game. It's going to be a close game. I have it as a toss-up. I'll come back at the end and tell you who I think wins that game and help us figure out the final record here. All right, then you come home and play Mizzou and Texas A&M before your bye week. I have both of those as toss-up games. Missouri is a very dangerous team. Laugh if you want to. People laughed at me last year. I said the same thing last year. Missouri going to score a ton of points. I told people, I said they're going to beat some teams they're not supposed to beat. They came out and started 1-5. Everybody was in my comment section telling me I'm an idiot. I've never watched football before. Then they reeled off 6 straight wins to end the season, and all those people disappeared out of my comment section. I'm high on Missouri again this year. Not high as in they're going 12-0, but Missouri is a legitimate team. They get a lot back on defense, which was terrible last year. I think their defense will be better. They return Drew Lock, the best passer in the SEC. This guy's going to throw for 4,000 yards. Secondary is a problem for you, South Carolina. They return their offensive line. They lose their top receiver from last year, but they return all their other receivers. They're going to be a dangerous team. I've got that as a toss-up. And then heading into your bye week, home, Texas A&M, toss-up, Jimbo Fisher, and Texas A&M, one of the hardest teams to figure out this year. Texas A&M has got some talent. Obviously, things went south there under Sumlin the last couple of years. He's gone. They bring Jimbo Fisher in, won a national title at Florida State not that long ago. Was that 2013? Yes, it was. Of course it was, with Jameis Winston. Texas A&M, an interesting team to watch this year. You get them at home, which is a benefit for you. This game's right in the middle of the season, so again, plenty of time for Texas A&M to figure out who they are and what they're doing by this point in the season. I've got that as a toss-up as well. That takes you into your bye week. Great timing for a bye week. Good job. Right in the middle of the season. I've previewed some teams got their bye week up here week 2 or 3. One team even has their bye week. Like they play all 12 games, then they have a bye. Well, what are they doing? I don't know. But anyway, good timing for your bye week. Get some players rested up. And then take on the second half of your schedule, which starts at home against Tennessee. Win. Tennessee's not going to be good again this year. Breaking news, I know. Sun also rises in the east too, if you didn't know that either. But it does, and Tennessee is bad, okay? They're just not going to be very good. Tennessee has never beaten Will Muschamp. Didn't matter where he was, Florida or South Carolina. Will Muschamp had a 4-win season at Florida. One of those 4 wins was against Tennessee. For whatever reason, Tennessee, a mental issue, I don't know what it is. They can't beat Will Muschamp. You get them at home this year. Last year was one of the ugliest college football games of the year, South Carolina and Tennessee. It was some kind of weird field goal crap. I forget what the final score was, but it was something ridiculous, like 16-9. You're going to have to score more points than that, I think, but I think you will. And you guys get a big win here, big conference win at home over Tennessee. Then you got to go on the road twice in a row, Ole Miss and Florida. I've got both those games as toss-ups. I've done the Florida preview already. In fact, I think I did it yesterday. So if you saw that, you already know where I'm going. But I'll come back and talk about those 2 games here in a minute. Come back home, play Chattanooga. That's a win. And then your last game of the year, in-state rivals against the Taters, against Clemson up there. Auburn with a lake, really, is all Clemson is. Loss. Listen, Clemson's way more talented than you are. They've owned you the last couple of years. And by owned, I don't mean that they've just beat you. I mean, they have just absolutely bodied you. I mean, they have absolutely, whatever term you want to use, curb stomp, skull drag, molly-whopped, whatever. I mean, they score at will on you. You can't move the ball on them. Jake Bentley is an interception machine. Not just against Clemson, though. He's an interception machine in general. But I just don't see you beating the Taters this year. You got to play them there. Maybe next year. You get used to that term, I guess, if you're a Gamecock fan. But you're not beating Clemson. All right, so what does that have? That gives you, I got you down as a lot of wins, a lot of toss-ups, and I mean, you're losing to Georgia and Clemson. You just are. Let's go back through some of these toss-up games and try to come up with a final record. At Kentucky, I gave you a win here. I think you snapped a streak against Kentucky. I think you're a better team than Kentucky. After what I saw Kentucky do against Florida last year, I think they're one of the worst coached teams in the SEC. And you guys should be able to go on the road at Kentucky, even though you've struggled with them the last 4 years, losing all 4. I think you get a win there at Kentucky, and that puts you then at 4-1. Missouri. Loss. I think Missouri beats you. I know you get them at home. Here's the thing. Missouri and Texas A&M, I think you split those 2 games. Here's my thinking on Will Muschamp. And this is, again, something if you've been watching me for a while, you already know this about me. When I look at South Carolina's schedule, I see 2 teams that are way better than South Carolina, Georgia and Clemson. And I automatically chalk those up as losses. I look at these other 10 teams and I say, you know, South Carolina is potentially better than all 10 of these other teams here. And so do you say, well, then that means they're going 10-2? No. Number one, almost every team in America, every single year, loses at least 1 game a year that they're not supposed to lose. even elite teams, Clemson to Syracuse, Oklahoma to Iowa State, Ohio State to Iowa, Georgia to Auburn. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. Almost every single team loses at least one game a year. And I'm talking about coaches like Urban Meyer. I mean, ex-coach Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart. I mean, any coach you want to name loses almost every single year, one game that they're not supposed to lose. And then I look at Will Muschamp and I say, well, he's probably going to do that twice. And if you're arguing with me, then ask yourself this. Should he have beaten Kentucky last year? Were you better than Kentucky last year? Yes. Where was that game played? In Columbia. You lost. That was your game last year that you lost, that I don't think you were supposed to lose. I've got you winning it this year, but I see Mizzou and Texas A&M, and I say, okay, Mizzou's going to sling the ball around. South Carolina's weakness is their secondary. I see this Texas A&M game. I say, okay, Jimbo Fisher, got to be an upgrade over Sumlin, national title winner, changing things up. There's a lot of talent there. I think you win one and lose one there. I'm going to go with Missouri as the loss and Texas A&M as the win. Missouri comes off a bye week and then plays you. So they're going to have 2 weeks to prepare for you at a point in the season where you haven't had a bye week yet. That's an advantage. And I think Mizzou gets the win. You turn around and beat Texas A&M, so you're sitting at 2 losses then heading into your bye week. All right, of course, you beat Tennessee. And then I have a similar situation here at Ole Miss and at Florida. I'm going to tell you something right now. Will Muschamp is not winning 2 road games in a row against Ole Miss and Florida. Ain't happening, Jack. I'm sorry. Now, you South Carolina fans are going to get down here right now in this comment section and type about this, and that's fine. Believe me, nothing a South Carolina fan says to me bothers me. You're talking about a group of people who think mayonnaise is a meal, okay? So nothing y'all say bothers me, but you're losing one of these games too. Now, obviously, I've done the Florida preview already, okay? I gave you a win. You know that if you saw that video. I think you beat Florida. I think you lose at Ole Miss. They love their quarterback, that TAMU guy. They basically ran Shea Patterson off, who was a really good quarterback, in order to start this TAMU guy. I know they're on probation. They can't make a bowl game. At this point in the season, they're playing to ruin your season. That's their bowl game. Ole Miss's bowl game these last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, every week is a bowl game for them because they're trying to ruin someone else's season. Even with a loss to Georgia, let's say you don't lose to Missouri and you're sitting at 1 loss when you get there, this would knock you out of the race for the East. I could go on and on. The point is, Will Muschamp's going to lose some games he ain't supposed to lose. Why? Almost everybody does it every single year. Will Muschamp probably going to do it twice. That's just my opinion. I'm sorry. So you beat Florida, you lose to Ole Miss. You beat Chattanooga, of course, at home, and you lose to your daddy, Clemson, on the road to end the season. You finish the season at 8-4. Okay? Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I already did, and that's 3 SEC losses. Already did the Florida preview. They also had 3 SEC losses. However, I have you beating Florida, so you're ahead of them in the East at this point. I have not done the Missouri preview yet. Okay? Now, they're one of the teams I have beating you, so it's possible you finish behind Missouri, depending on how many SEC losses I can find for them when I get around to doing that preview. But my prediction for South Carolina, 8-4, either 2nd or 3rd in the East, probably depending on a tiebreaker with Florida and Mizzou. That's it. Listen, I know a lot of you are going to be mad. You're going to say, well, Uncle Lou hates South Carolina. He's been hating South Carolina forever. Listen, all that's true, and whether you believe me or not, I really don't care. That's my honest opinion of what South Carolina is going to do this year. If I wanted to make a trash talk video, I'd have you losing to Florida. I'd have you losing to Texas A&M, Mizzou. I'd say, well, you lost to Kentucky 4 times in a row. I'm picking Kentucky until you beat them, but I picked you to beat Kentucky. So you can get mad if you want, but it's like I tell people all the time, just because something makes you mad, don't mean it ain't true. But have a great morning, though.